If you've ever pitched a client overseas, you've probably felt that strange silence in a room, that moment when your usual charm doesn't land. Your best slide feels off, and suddenly, the deal you thought was in the bag? It's gone. That silence, that invisible wall, isn't about price or product or even persuasion. It's about culture. Welcome to today's episode of the Sales Foundation podcast, where we uncover the lessons hidden behind centuries of selling. In this conversation, we're going to explore what really happens when worlds collide, when sales crosses borders and communication becomes a product. We'll break down why American pitch feels to direct in Japan, why Latin buyers expect warmth before logic, and why a Finnish handshake might say more than a 30-minute presentation. And to guide us through this, we'll lean on one of the most influential thinkers in cross-cultural communication, Richard D. Lewis, author of When Cultures Collide. His framework of linear active, multi-active, and reactive cultures has become a secret map for global negotiators, diplomats, and yes, sales professionals. So stick with us, because by the end of this episode, you'll not only understand how to adapt your selling style across cultures, but also why doing so might be the single biggest advantage in today's global market. And before we dive in, if you enjoy stories that connect history, psychology, and the art of selling, make sure to subscribe, and drop a comment.
Welcome back to the Sales Foundation podcast, where we explore the stories, systems, and people that shaped how we sell today. I'm your host, Edson, and with me, as always, the lovely Evelyn.
Pleasure to be here, Edson. Today we have a really cool topic, something we're really passionate about. We're taking on one of the most fascinating and often overlooked aspects of selling, cross-cultural communication. Because when you sell across borders, you're not just crossing time zones, you're crossing worldviews.
Absolutely. What works in Chicago might crash and burn in Tokyo. And what convinces a client in Madrid could offend one in Helsinki. So today, we're diving into how salespeople adapt across cultures, and how Richard D. Lewis' legendary book, When Cultures Collide, helps us decode these invisible dynamics.
We'll explore stories from multinational sales, negotiation breakdowns, and the cultural frameworks that explain why the same pitch can succeed or fail, just based on who's sitting across the table.
Before we jump into tactics, let's look back. The moment trade went global, selling went intercultural. Think of the Silk Road, which we covered a couple of episodes ago, or the age of exploration. Every exchange required decoding another culture's customs, hierarchies, and taboos.
Exactly. Merchants learned early that a good product wasn't enough. You had to respect the ritual of exchange. In China, gifts might precede negotiation. In Arabia, hospitality and conversation came first. Jump straight into the price, and you'd lose respect.
Fast forward to the 20th century. Globalization put sales teams in boardrooms from Sao Paulo to Seoul. That's when intercultural communication became a science. Anthropologists like Edward T. Hall introduced concepts like high-context and low-context communication, describing whether people rely on explicit words or shared understanding.
And that's where Richard D. Lewis takes it further. In When Cultures Collide, he mapped national communication styles into three big categories: linear active, multi-active, and reactive.
Right, and that model is gold for understanding sales meetings. Linear active cultures, like the US, Germany, or the UK, value facts, logic, and agendas. Multi-active ones, like Italy, Mexico, or Brazil, are more emotional, people-oriented, and flexible with time. Reactive cultures like Japan, China, or Korea prioritize harmony, listening, and indirect responses.
And that's not just theory. It literally shapes how deals unfold. If a German salesperson tries to push a structured pitch on a Japanese client, they'll come across as rigid and impatient. Meanwhile, a Brazilian seller chatting with a Finnish buyer might seem chaotic or unfocused.
Let's bring this to life. Imagine an American SaaS company expanding into Japan. Their sales deck is bullet-pointed, sharp, and aimed at quick decision-making. But their Japanese client keeps nodding politely and asking for follow-up meetings.
To the Americans, that looks like indecision. But in Japanese culture, a reactive one, that's actually a form of respect. They're consulting the group, seeking consensus, and showing patience. The yes doesn't mean I agree. It means I understand.
And that is where deals die, not because the offer's bad, but because meanings are misread. In one case study, an American VP misinterpreted silence from Japanese executives as disinterest. He filled the silence with more persuasion, which actually disrespected their process. The deal evaporated.
Contrast that with how Latin American sales often thrive on relationship building. In countries like Mexico or Brazil, trust is personal before professional. A salesperson who dives into spreadsheets before sharing a coffee is skipping a cultural step.
That's the multi-active mindset Lewis describes, where overlapping conversations, emotion, and spontaneity are part of rapport building. The meeting isn't off track. It's how they're evaluating if they like you.
And then you have the Nordic model, very linear active. Meetings are short, clear, and modest. Don't oversell. Don't exaggerate. A Finnish buyer wants truth, not enthusiasm.
Lewis said something brilliant. Different cultures see time, truth, and trust through entirely different lenses. That's the heart of cross-cultural sales. Adaptation isn't manipulation. It's empathy applied through business.
So how do top global sales teams adapt? There's actually a science behind it. Let's break down the 5 dimensions of cultural adaptation every international seller should master.
High-context cultures, like Japan, France, or Saudi Arabia, expect nuance. The message is in how you say it, not just what you say. Low-context cultures, like the US, Canada, or Germany, value directness and clarity.
So if you're presenting in a high-context culture, subtlety wins. Let silence breathe. Read the room. If you're in a low-context culture, be concise, factual, and transparent. Ambiguity can look like deception.
In some regions, especially Asia or the Middle East, hierarchy defines authority. The most senior person might not speak, but their body language decides the outcome. In egalitarian cultures like Scandinavia or the Netherlands, decisions are collective. Overpowering the group signals arrogance.
This is where American salespeople often trip up. They try to close in one meeting. But in countries like Japan, decisions are consensual and non-confrontational. The real yes comes weeks later, after internal alignment.
Lewis describes this perfectly. Linear active cultures see time as a sequence, punctual, scheduled, predictable. Multi-active cultures see time as fluid, multiple things happening at once, with flexibility for relationships. Reactive cultures treat time as cyclical, allowing space for reflection and consensus.
So a late meeting in Brazil doesn't mean disrespect. It means priorities are fluid. But being 5 minutes late in Switzerland might already cost you credibility.
This might be the biggest universal. In Anglo cultures, trust is contractual. We trust because the terms are clear. In Latin and Asian cultures, trust is emotional and historical. We trust because we've shared time.
That's why relationship selling has different meanings. In Spain, a long lunch builds loyalty. In the US, a well-drafted proposal does. You adapt not by changing your personality, but by tuning your trust building to their frequency.
And when cultures collide, Lewis points out that some cultures persuade through logic and data, others through emotion and narrative, and others still through harmony and respect.
A German presentation that's packed with evidence might feel cold to an Italian. Meanwhile, an American power pitch might overwhelm a Japanese or Finnish buyer. Great cross-cultural sellers master chameleon communication, switching tone, pace, and emphasis to match cultural rhythm.
Let's look at some real examples. When IKEA expanded into the Middle East, they realized their catalogs showing Western-style bedrooms didn't resonate. Families preferred shared spaces and community imagery. So they redesigned marketing visuals, sales soared.
Or take Procter & Gamble in Japan. Early on, they pushed a very American-style problem-solution ad strategy, which felt too aggressive. Once they shifted to empathy-based storytelling, mirroring Japanese subtlety, brand loyalty took off.
In B2B sales, a classic example comes from Siemens. Their German engineers had to learn that Chinese clients expected a slower, relationship-first process, including hosting dinners before contract talks. After adjusting, they improved close rates dramatically.
That's the magic of cultural intelligence, understanding that selling is social anthropology with a quota.
Today, globalization AHS created hybrid workspaces, multinational teams on Teams, digital-first buyers, and blended cultures.
Yes, and Lewis's models are more relevant than ever. The linear active mindset rules LinkedIn and B2B SaaS. The multi-active style dominates in creative and Latin markets. The reactive style shines in Asian conglomerates and high-context diplomacy.
Companies now train teams in cultural intelligence, CQ, a measurable skill combining awareness, empathy, and adaptability. It's no longer enough to know about cultures. You have to read cues in real time and flex your behavior without losing authenticity.
Sales enablement teams at global giants like Microsoft and HubSpot now teach this as part of onboarding, because even with AI, automation, and translation tools, selling remains human.
So what can we take away from all this? First, culture doesn't divide us. It defines the game board. If you learn the rules of another culture, you're not faking, you're showing respect.
Second, adaptation beats persuasion. The best sellers don't push, they pivot. They read signals, slow down, and shape the experience for the other side.
Third, curiosity creates connection. Ask about the local business culture, not just the product fit. People feel seen when you make the effort.
And finally, Richard Lewis's model reminds us that every negotiation is a dance. Whether you lead or follow, what matters is that both partners feel the rhythm.
Cross-cultural selling is more than a sales skill, it's a human one. In a world where deals span continents and conversations cross languages, understanding others isn't optional. It's your edge.
Next week, we'll explore another frontier, storytelling in sales. Until then, keep listening, keep adapting, and remember, in sales, empathy is universal currency.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Foundation of Sales podcast. See you next week for a new episode, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what other subjects you would like us to dive into.
So, what did we uncover today? That selling across cultures isn't about mastering scripts. It's about mastering awareness. We learned that what feels confident in one country might feel arrogant in another. That a pause can mean respect, not hesitation. That trust might live in a handshake, a story, or a shared meal, depending on where you are in the world. From Richard D. Lewis's When Cultures Collide, we saw that every buyer sits somewhere between linear active, multi-active, and reactive, and that great salespeople learn to dance between them with empathy, curiosity, and flexibility. Because when you understand culture, you don't just sell better, you connect deeper. If you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your stories, and maybe even feature them in a future episode.